The desert submarine. In the heart of the desert, something unimaginable was discovered. A colossal object emerged from the sands, defying logic and history. Witnesses claim to have seen mystical creatures prowling the area on the night of the discovery. When authorities arrived, the mystery took an even darker turn. Before diving into this fascinating story, don't forget to share it with your friends and explore other incredible mysteries. The scorching sun of the Sahara mercilessly punished the improvised tent where Sarah Mitchell organized her notes. At 32, the American archaeologist never imagined that her research on ancient civilizations would lead her to one of the most intriguing discoveries of the 21st century. 3 weeks ago, she had received an encrypted email from her former mentor, Dr. Robert Hayes, with specific coordinates in the desert and an enigmatic message. What shouldn't be here is, come immediately. The hastily set up research camp housed a small team. Besides Sarah, only her assistant Mark Turner, a young prodigy in underwater technology, and Emily Rodriguez, a geologist specializing in desert formations. The trio had secured private funding through the mysterious Phoenix Foundation, which showed unusual interest in the project after Sarah vaguely mentioned the possibility of finding anomalous structures in the region. "Sarah, you need to see this." Mark's voice echoed through the radio communicator, breaking the afternoon silence. "The scan results are in and, well, you'd better come here." Adjusting her headscarf, a gift from Dr. Hayes to respect local customs, Sarah quickly crossed the sandy terrain to the equipment tent. Mark was hunched over a computer screen, his face illuminated by the bluish glow of the monitor. "Look at this." He pointed to a series of three-dimensional images generated by the ground-penetrating radar. "The metallic structure is at least 120 meters long, and the shape—" "Sarah, this is impossible." Emily, who had been silently analyzing soil samples, approached the screen. "The metal composition is different from anything I've ever seen, and the preservation depth suggests it's been here for decades, centuries," Sarah completed, her eyes fixed on the images. "Millennia," Emily corrected, her voice trembling slightly. "The sedimentary layers indicate that this structure has been here for at least 12,000 years. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of an approaching helicopter. Sarah ran outside the tent, shielding her eyes from the sand kicked up by the rotors. A tall man with graying hair and sun-tanned skin descended from the aircraft, Dr. Hayes. "My dear student," he embraced Sarah tightly, "forgive me for the mystery, but I needed to be sure before involving more people." Inside the main tent, Hayes spread out a series of old photographs, yellowed documents, and a worn leather journal. "In 1952, my father was a young nomad when he found something strange in the dunes. He kept it secret all his life, but before passing, he gave me this." He opened the journal, revealing detailed drawings of a structure that eerily resembled the radar images. "But that's not all," continued Hayes, lowering his voice. 2 months ago, I received a visit from a woman. She introduced herself as a representative of the Phoenix Foundation. She knew about the journal, about the coordinates, about everything. She offered unlimited funding for the research, but with one condition. Any discovery should be reported to the Foundation first. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" "Because she showed me this." Hayes took an old black and white photograph from his pocket. The image showed an elegant woman alongside a group of scientists. In the background, partially visible, was a metallic structure emerging from the sand. The date stamped on the back, 1923. "The most intriguing part," Hayes pointed to the woman in the photo, "is that she is identical to the Foundation representative who visited me. Not a descendant, not a resemblance, identical." The sound of more helicopters cut the conversation short. Emily rushed into the tent. "We have company, lots of company." Sarah ran outside, only to see 5 black helicopters landing in precise formation. Men in dark suits quickly descended, carrying sophisticated equipment. Among them, an elegant woman walked with feline grace, her impeccable suit contrasting with the desert environment. "Dr. Mitchell," the woman smiled, extending her hand. "I'm Victoria Phoenix. I believe we have much to discuss about your discovery." Sarah felt the weight of Victoria's gaze, as if she could see through her soul. At that moment she realized she had stumbled upon something much bigger than a simple archaeological anomaly. The submarine buried in the desert was just the tip of an iceberg of mysteries that dated back to a past that defied everything humanity believed to know about its own history. Mark approached discreetly, whispering, "Sarah, you need to see this. The sensors are detecting something moving inside the structure." The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky in orange hues while the desert wind carried with it the echo of millennial secrets about to be revealed. Sarah knew there was no turning back. She was about to dive into much deeper waters than she had ever imagined finding in the middle of the desert. Night fell over the camp, enveloping the dunes in a blanket of darkness, punctuated only by the artificial lights of the newly installed equipment. Sarah observed, with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, the synchronized ballet of the Phoenix Foundation team. In a few hours, they had transformed the modest research field into a high-tech operations base. Victoria Phoenix walked among the technicians with the grace of a dancer and the authority of a general. Her eyes, as deep blue as the ocean, seemed to hold secrets from past eras. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she knew her from somewhere, although that was logically impossible. "Dr. Mitchell," Victoria's melodious voice cut through her thoughts, "I think it's time we joined forces. What you've discovered here, well, let's say it's just the tip of the iceberg." Sarah hesitated, casting a glance at Dr. Hayes, who nodded discreetly. "Ms. Phoenix, before anything else, I need to understand exactly who you are and what you know about this." She gestured toward the excavation site. Victoria smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Fair enough, but first, how about we take a closer look at our underground guest?" Guided by Victoria, the group headed to a larger, newly erected tent. Inside, a series of monitors displayed real-time images of the subsoil. Mark, who was already there analyzing the data, looked at Sarah with an expression of amazement. "Sarah, you won't believe this," he said, pointing to one of the screens. "That movement we detected. It's not ancient machinery reactivated as we thought. They're life forms." The images showed undefined silhouettes moving within the submerged structure. They were fluid, almost ethereal forms that seemed to dance in a hypnotic choreography. "What exactly are we seeing here?" asked Emily, her voice trembling slightly. Victoria approached the screen, her eyes shining with an almost supernatural intensity. "What you're seeing, my dears, are the last vestiges of a civilization that existed long before what your history books dare to imagine." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of equipment being turned on outside. Victoria continued, "The Phoenix Foundation has existed longer than any of you can imagine. Our mission is to protect and, when necessary, reveal the secrets that humanity is not yet ready to fully comprehend." Sarah felt a wave of adrenaline course through her body. Her entire academic life, all the theories she had proposed and that were ridiculed by the scientific community, seemed about to be validated. "Are you saying that this structure is evidence of a pre-diluvian civilization?" Victoria nodded slowly. "Not just pre-diluvian, Dr. Mitchell. We're talking about a civilization that mastered technologies that are still beyond our understanding today." Dr. Hayes, who had been observing everything in silence, finally spoke up. "The photograph you showed me, the woman, it was you, wasn't it?" Victoria's smile widened, revealing a row of perfectly white teeth. "Perceptive as always, Robert. Yes, it was me. Just as it was me in 1880 when I funded the first modern excavations in Egypt, and in 1452 when I whispered ideas into Leonardo da Vinci's ear." The revelation fell like a bomb on the group. Mark was the first to regain his speech. "That's impossible. Are you saying you're immortal?" "Immortal is such a definitive word," Victoria responded with an elegant shrug. "Let's just say my perspective of time is different from yours." Sarah, struggling to process all the information, turned her attention back to the monitors. The forms continued their silent ballet, apparently oblivious to the tumult they were causing above the surface. "And what about them? What are they?" Victoria approached Sarah, placing a hand on her shoulder. The touch was cold, almost electric. They, my dear, are the reason why we're all here. They are the guardians, the last of their kind, waiting patiently for the right moment to awaken. Emily, who had been silently analyzing the geological data, interrupted. But that doesn't make sense. The sedimentary layers indicate that this structure has been here for millennia. How can there be active life forms for so long? Ah, Dr. Rodriguez, Victoria smiled. You're still thinking within the parameters of known science. What we have here is technology that transcends our current understanding. Advanced stasis, quantum manipulation of time. Call it what you will. The fact is they are here, alive, waiting. Sarah felt her heart racing. Waiting for what? Victoria's gaze became distant, almost melancholic. For the return of the waters, Dr. Mitchell. For the moment when the Sahara will once again become the ocean it once was. At this moment, one of the Phoenix Foundation technicians hastily entered the tent. Ms. Phoenix, we've detected a magnetic anomaly rapidly approaching the southern perimeter. Victoria seemed momentarily alarmed, something that contrasted with her usually controlled posture. Already, I didn't expect them to react so quickly. Who? Asked Sarah, feeling they were about to dive even deeper into this mystery. The others, Victoria replied enigmatically, those who would prefer some secrets to remain buried. Prepare yourselves, my dears. The real adventure is about to begin. No. Sooner had she finished speaking than the sound of powerful engines cut through the night air. Powerful lights illuminated the camp, and authoritative voices began shouting orders. Sarah ran outside the tent, only to be confronted with a scene that seemed straight out of a science fiction movie. Unidentified military vehicles surrounded the perimeter, and soldiers in futuristic suits advanced in formation. Dr. Hayes grabbed Sarah's arm. We need to protect the discoveries. Quick, to the command center. As they ran back to the main tent, Sarah couldn't help but notice that Victoria Phoenix had completely disappeared. Chaos ensued in the camp, with team members running in all directions, trying to save equipment and data. Mark managed to catch up with them, carrying an external hard drive. I managed to back up everything, but I don't know how long we can keep this a secret. Sarah looked up at the starry desert sky, as vast and mysterious as the secrets beginning to reveal themselves. She knew that from that moment on, her life and potentially the history of humanity would never be the same. The submarine in the desert was just the beginning of a journey that promised to challenge everything they believed they knew about, the past, present, and future of Earth. The night in the desert transformed into organized chaos. Strobe lights cut through the darkness as military vehicles surrounded the camp perimeter. Sarah, Mark, and Dr. Hayes took refuge in the main tent, hastily converted into an improvised command center. We need to protect the data at all costs, Sarah gasped, her eyes rapidly alternating between multiple computer screens. Mark, initiate the encryption protocol we developed. Emily, where are you? As if answering her question, Emily burst into the tent, her face covered in sand and sweat. I managed to save the most important samples, but I had to abandon some of the equipment. Dr. Hayes, surprisingly calm amid the chaos, began organizing the most crucial documents. We can't let them take my father's journal. It's the only proof we have of the original discovery. From outside, an amplified voice reverberated. Attention, research team. This is Colonel Vance of the Neptune Special Task Force. You are in a restricted area. We demand your immediate surrender and the handover of all collected data and artifacts. Sarah exchanged worried glances with her team. Neptune Task Force? Never heard of them. I have, muttered Dr. Hayes, his face visibly aging with concern. They're an ultra-secret unit, dedicated to suppressing discoveries that could rewrite history. Mark, who was furiously working at the computer, interrupted. Sarah, something strange is happening with our systems. I'm detecting interference that's not coming from them. At that moment, the tent lights flickered, and all monitors went black for a second. When they came back to life, a message was flashing on the main screen. Atlantis Protocol activated. Extraction coordinates 23° N, 12° E. Estimated time 10 minutes. Atlantis, Emily gasped. This can't be a coincidence. Sarah felt her heart race. The mention of Atlantis, combined with the discovery of the submarine in the desert and the mysterious creatures, was weaving a tapestry of mystery that defied all logic. "We have to trust her," Sarah said suddenly, receiving confused looks. "Victoria, whatever or whoever she is, I think she's trying to help us." Dr. Hayes nodded slowly. "I agree. But how are we going to get out of here with all this siege?" As if answering his question, a deafening noise filled the air. The ground began to shake, and for a moment everyone thought it was an earthquake. But then, through the tent opening, they saw something that defied comprehension. The desert sand was moving, undulating, as if it were water. And emerging from this sand tide, a vehicle that looked like a mix between a submarine and a land vehicle materialized. Its surface was made of an iridescent metal that reflected the camplights in a hypnotic manner. "Incredible," whispered Mark, his eyes wide with amazement. Colonel Vance's voice sounded again, this time with a note of panic. "Attention all units, contain that thing, don't let it approach the target." But it was too late. The vehicle slid through the sand as if it were navigating, stopping exactly in front of the main tent. A hatch opened, revealing an interior illuminated by a soft blue light. "Get in," Victoria's voice echoed from within. "We don't have much time." Sarah hesitated for only a second before making her decision. "Let's go. Grab everything you can. Carry." In a frantic rush, the team gathered laptops, hard drives, documents, and the precious samples. Meanwhile, soldiers from the Neptune task force tried to approach but were constantly repelled by waves of sand that seemed to have a life of their own. One by one, they boarded the strange vehicle. Sarah was the last, casting a final glance at the camp that, just a few hours ago, was the site of one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. As soon as she entered, the hatch closed hermetically. Victoria, seated in a chair that seemed fused to the vehicle's floor, smiled. "Welcome to Nautilus 2, gentlemen. I suppose you have many questions." "More than you can imagine," replied Sarah, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. The vehicle began to move, sliding below the sand surface as if diving into the ocean. Through circular windows, they could see sand flowing around them, occasionally revealing glimpses of ancient metallic structures buried beneath. "What you're seeing," explained Victoria as she piloted the vehicle with gentle touches on holographic panels, "are the remains of a vast network of tunnels and submerged cities. The Sahara, my dears, was once the heart of a civilization that would make our most advanced countries seem primitive in comparison." Emily, still clutching her samples, couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. "But how is that possible? All the geology—" "The geology, you know, Dr. Rodriguez," interrupted Victoria, "is based on a tiny fraction of Earth's true history. What we're about to show you will redefine everything you thought you knew about our planet and our species." The Nautilus 2 continued its underground journey, leaving behind the chaos on the surface. Sarah could feel they were approaching something monumental, something that would change the course of human history forever. "Where exactly are we going?" asked Dr. Hayes, his voice mixing curiosity and apprehension. Victoria turned to face them, her eyes shining with an ancestral knowledge. "To the place where everything began, and where everything may begin again. We're going to the heart of Atlantis." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the Nautilus 2 cutting through millennia of buried secrets. Sarah knew that, regardless of what they found at the end of this journey, nothing would be the same again. The submarine in the desert was just the first chapter of a much larger story, a story that promised to rewrite the past and possibly shape the future of humanity. The Nautilus 2 glided silently through the layers of sand and rock, its advanced technology making the journey surprisingly smooth. Sarah and her team watched in amazement through the circular portholes, occasionally glimpsing metallic structures and ruins of a long-forgotten civilization. Victoria, with the grace of someone who had navigated these subterranean waters for millennia, manipulated the holographic controls with precision. "We're approaching the central nexus," she announced, her voice carrying an emotion that seemed to mix reverence and nostalgia. Central nexus? Inquired Mark, his eyes shining with curiosity as he tried to decipher the alien symbols on the control. Panels. Victoria nodded, an enigmatic smile playing on her lips. The beating heart of the ancient Atlantean city network, a technological hub that even today would defy our most advanced understanding. As she spoke, the Nautilus II emerged into a colossal underwater cavern. The rocky walls gave way to a crystalline dome that seemed to extend for miles. Under this dome, a futuristic city rose, its crystal and metal towers reflecting a bluish light that seemed to emanate from the air itself. "Welcome to Poseidonis," announced Victoria, her voice charged with emotion. "The last city of Atlantis." The silence that followed was broken only by the collective sound of suspended breaths. It was a vision that defied everything they believed they knew about history and archaeology. "This is impossible," murmured Emily, her scientific skepticism fighting against the evidence before her eyes. Dr. Hayes, on the other hand, seemed to have aged a decade in seconds, the weight of realization visible on his wrinkled face. All the legends, all the myths, they were true. The Nautilus II docked gently at a crystalline pier. When the hatch opened, the group was greeted by surprisingly fresh air, carrying a light scent of ozone and something indefinable, almost ethereal. "How is this possible?" asked Sarah, her eyes scanning the impossible structures surrounding them. "How can an entire city remain hidden for so long?" Victoria began to walk, guiding them down an avenue that seemed made of solidified light. Atlantean technology operated at a level you would call magic. Quantum manipulation, space-time folding, zero-point energy, all this was commonplace for them. As they walked, Sarah noticed that the structures seemed to react to their presence, glowing softly and sometimes changing shape. It was as if the city itself was alive, conscious. "But what about the creatures we saw in the submarine?" asked Mark, remembering the ethereal forms they had detected. Victoria stopped in front of a building that resembled a giant Nautilus shell. "They are the Guardians, the last pure Atlanteans, kept in stasis until the time of the awakening." "Awakening?" Emily's voice trembled slightly. "What awakening?" Before Victoria could answer, the floor beneath their feet began to vibrate gently. The surrounding structures pulsed with a more intense light, and a low hum filled the air. "It's beginning," whispered Victoria, her eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Suddenly, luminous forms began to emerge from the surrounding structures. They were similar to the creatures they had seen on the scanners, but now, seen up close, they were breathtakingly beautiful. Humanoid beings, but made of pure energy, with features that resembled a mixture of human and something more. One of them, taller and more imposing than the others, approached the group. When it spoke, its voice resonated not just in the air, but directly in their minds. "Welcome, children of Gaia. For millennia we have waited for this moment." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming her astonishment. What are you?" The luminous being tilted, its head slightly as if smiling. "We are the Atlanteans, the guardians of knowledge, and you, dear visitors, are the key to the next chapter in your world's history." Victoria turned to the group, her eyes shining with an almost supernatural intensity. "This is why you're here. The submarine in the desert wasn't just a relic. It was a sign, a trigger. Its discovery activated protocols dormant for millennia." Dr. Hayes, regaining some of his composure, asked, "But why? Why now?" The Atlantean answered, its mental voice laden with gravity, "Because your world stands on the brink of transformation. The waters are rising, continents are shifting. The cycle that submerged Atlantis is about to repeat itself." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "You're saying that another global flood is coming?" Victoria nodded solemnly. "Not just a flood, Sarah, a complete reconfiguration of Earth's geography. And you, all of you, have been chosen to be the guardians of knowledge in this new era." Mark, who had been silent until then, finally found his voice. "But what about the rest of the world? We can't just leave them." The Atlantean raised a luminous hand, gently interrupting him. "Fear not. The knowledge we will share with you is not for destruction, but for preservation and rebirth. Through you, humanity will have a chance to evolve, to adapt to what is coming. Sarah looked at her companions, seeing in their faces the same mixture of fear, excitement, and determination that she felt. They were about to embark on a journey that would not only rewrite history, but shape the future of humanity. "What should we do?" she asked, her voice firm despite the turmoil of emotions in her chest. Victoria smiled, a smile that seemed to contain the wisdom of millennia. "Now, my dears, you learn. Learn about the forgotten past and the coming future, and then you become the architects of a new era." As the group prepared to dive into the secrets of Atlantis, Sarah couldn't help but think of the lonely submarine in the desert. What had begun as an intriguing archaeological discovery had transformed into the key to humanity's destiny. And she, a simple archaeologist from America, was at the center of it all. The next chapter of human history was about to be written, and they would be the authors. The days that followed were a whirlwind of knowledge and revelations for Sarah and her team. The city of Poseidonis revealed itself as a vast living archive. Each structure, each artifact, a window into a past so advanced it bordered on the incomprehensible. In a room resembling a futuristic amphitheater, the group watched holographic projections narrating the history of Atlantis. Victoria, now clearly in her element, served as interpreter and guide. The Atlantean civilization, she explained, as images of floating cities and impossible machines danced in the air, reached its peak about 15,000 years ago. They mastered energy manipulation at a quantum level, allowing feats we would today call miracles. Dr. Hayes, absorbing every detail with eager eyes, questioned, but what caused their downfall? If they were so advanced? The projection changed, showing an Earth very different from the one they knew. Continents in strange positions, oceans where deserts now existed. Victoria sighed, a note of sadness in her voice. Arrogance. Unbridled ambition. The Atlanteans began to play with forces. They didn't fully understand. They tried to control Earth's core itself, to generate unlimited energy. The images showed a catastrophe on a global scale. Continents sinking, others emerging, giant tsunamis sweeping across the planet's surface. The result was a cataclysm. That reconfigured the planet, continued Victoria. Atlantis, the heart of civilization, sank almost instantaneously. Only a few cities like Poseidonis survived, protected by cutting-edge technology. Emily, who had been analyzing geological data on a nearby panel, interrupted. This would explain the anomalies we've always found in the geological records of that period. But you mentioned this is about to happen again. Victoria's countenance became grave. Yes, Earth's cycle is long but inexorable. Tectonic plates are moving, ocean currents changing. In less than a century, the world as you know it will no longer exist. Sarah felt a weight in her chest. And there's nothing we can do to prevent it. One of the Atlanteans, who had been silently observing until then, spoke up. Prevent, no, but prepare, yes, that's why you're here. Mark, who had spent the last few days deciphering Atlantean technology with almost childlike enthusiasm, asked, "But how? How can we prepare the world for something like this?" Victoria made a gesture, and the projection changed again, showing a series of structures scattered across the globe. These are containment stations, built by the surviving Atlanteans after the first cataclysm. They were designed to minimize the damage from the next great shift. Some of these locations, muttered Dr. Hayes, correspond to mysterious archaeological sites we've never been able to fully explain. Exactly, agreed Victoria. Stonehenge, the Nazca Lines, the pyramids, they're all part of a global protection network. But over time, the knowledge was lost, and these structures became dormant. Sarah stood up, determination burning in her eyes. So our mission is to reactivate this network, prepare the world for what's coming? The Atlantean nodded solemnly. Yes, but it's more than that. You will be the guardians of knowledge, the teachers of a new era. You'll have to guide humanity not just to survive, but to evolve. Victoria added, think of it as an arc. Not just to preserve lives, but to preserve knowledge, culture, the best that humanity has to offer. The magnitude of the task before them was overwhelming. Emily, always the voice of reason, expressed the concern they all felt. But how will we convince the world? Governments, scientists? They'll label us as crazy. Victoria smiled, a smile that carried the weight of millennia of secrets. That's where the Phoenix Foundation comes in. We have resources, influence, but more importantly, we have irrefutable evidence. The submarine in the desert was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the group was immersed in an intense training program. They learned about technologies that defied the laws of physics as they knew them, about preservation methods that could keep entire cities safe underwater, about forms of communication that transcended space and time. Each team member found their role in this grand mission. Mark delved into the technology, learning to merge Atlantean knowledge with modern science. Emily focused on geology and climatology, seeking to understand and predict the changes to come. Dr. Hayes became the historian, connecting the dots between the forgotten past and the uncertain future. And Sarah? She found herself in the role of leader, the bridge between two worlds, the voice that would have to convince humanity of its imminent destiny. One night, as she observed the underwater city from a crystalline balcony, Sarah was approached by Victoria. "Are you beginning to understand the magnitude of what lies ahead?" asked the enigmatic woman. Sarah nodded, her eyes reflecting the ethereal lights of the city. "It's overwhelming. Sometimes I wonder if we're up to this task." Victoria placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch surprisingly warm and comforting. "You were chosen for a reason, Sarah. Your curiosity, your passion for truth, your ability to see beyond the obvious, they're exactly what the world needs now." Sarah turned to face her. "And you? What's your story? How do you fit into all this?" For a moment, Victoria's mask of serenity faltered, revealing a depth of emotion Sarah hadn't expected. "My story? It's long and complicated, filled with joys and tragedies. Let's just say I'm a guardian, just as you're becoming. My mission has been to preserve knowledge, guide humanity from behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment." Sarah felt there was much more to this story, layers of mystery that might never be fully revealed. But at that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was the mission ahead, the future they needed to shape. "And now?" asked Sarah, her voice laden with determination. "What's the next step?" Victoria smiled, a glimmer of hope in her ancient eyes. "Now, my dear, we change the world, one heart, one mind at a time." As the lights of Poseidonis twinkled around them, Sarah felt the weight of history and the future on her shoulders. The submarine in the desert had been just the beginning. The true journey, the mission to save and transform humanity, was just beginning, and she was ready for the challenge. The return to the surface world was like awakening from a vivid dream for Sarah and her team. After weeks immersed in the secrets of Atlantis, everyday reality seemed strangely mundane, and at the same time, more fragile than ever. Victoria guided them back through the desert, this time in a more conventional vehicle, though Sarah suspected its technology was as advanced as the Nautilus II. The submarine in the desert, the catalyst for this entire adventure, had been carefully concealed by the Phoenix Foundation. "We can't risk it falling into the wrong hands," explained Victoria, as she drove. "At least not yet." Upon arriving in Cairo, they were met by a discreet entourage from the Phoenix Foundation. Dr. Amy Hawthorne, a middle-aged woman with astute eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, awaited them in a private conference room in a luxury hotel. "Welcome back," she smiled, though her eyes revealed a seriousness that contrasted with her friendly tone. "I imagine you have much to process." Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the information they carried. "Dr. Hawthorne, what we've seen, what we've learned, is beyond anything we could have imagined." "And yet," Mark interjected, "it feels like we've barely scratched the surface." Dr. Hawthorne gestured for them to sit. "Exactly why our next phase is crucial. We need to introduce this knowledge to the world in a controlled and strategic manner." Emily, always practical, questioned, "And how exactly do we plan to do that? We can't just announce that the world as we know it is about to end." "Not directly," agreed Victoria, who had been observing the scene in silence. "But we can plant the seeds, prepare the ground." Dr. Hawthorne activated a holographic projector in the center of the table, displaying a global map with various marked points. "These are the locations of the Atlantean containment stations. Our first step will be to reactivate them discreetly." "Each of you," she continued, looking at Sarah and her team, "will lead a specialized team. You will be the guardians of this knowledge, the intermediaries between the past and the future." Sarah felt a mixture of honor and apprehension. What about the scientific community? The media? Surely we won't be able to keep this secret for long. Victoria smiled enigmatically. "We don't intend to keep it secret, Sarah. We intend to reveal it in a way that the world can accept and understand." The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Each team member received specific missions. Mark was assigned to lead a team of engineers and programmers, tasked with integrating Atlantean technology with modern systems. His first project, developing an undetectable quantum communication network. Emily was put in charge of a team of geologists and climatologists. Her mission was to map imminent tectonic changes and develop predictive models using Atlantean knowledge. Dr. Hayes, with his vast archaeological experience, was charged with reinterpreting human history in light of the new discoveries. He would lead expeditions to key archaeological sites, seeking evidence that could corroborate the Atlantean narrative. And Sarah? She found herself at the center of everything, the bridge between the different teams and, more importantly, the voice that would bring these discoveries to the world. "You have a gift, Sarah," Victoria said during one of their strategy sessions. "A capacity to translate complex concepts into something people can understand and accept. We'll need that in the coming years." The magnitude of the task ahead was overwhelming. It wasn't just about revealing a lost civilization, but preparing humanity for an imminent global transformation. One night, while working late in her new office at the Phoenix Foundation headquarters, Sarah was surprised by an unexpected visit. It was the Atlantean they had met in Poseidonis, its ethereal form glowing softly in the dimness. "You carry a great burden," it said, its voice resonating more in her mind than in the air. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of her responsibility. "Sometimes I wonder if we're doing the right thing, if we have the right to decide humanity's fate." The Atlantean approached, its presence emanating an ancestral calm. "You are not deciding the fate, Sarah. You are offering a chance. The future will always belong to those who live in it." "But what if we fail?" she asked, expressing the fear that tormented her in the quiet hours of the night. "Failure," replied the luminous being, "only occurs when one gives up. Each step, each mind you reach, will be a victory. Remember, change is not always immediately visible, but every wave begins with a small disturbance in the water." Its words brought unexpected comfort. Sarah remembered the submarine in the desert, how a single discovery had triggered a series of events that would now shape Earth's future. In the months that followed, the team worked tirelessly. Scientific articles began to emerge, subtly questioning established paradigms. Mysterious documentaries captured the public's imagination. Politicians and world leaders were discreetly approached, planting the seeds of a new global consciousness. And at the center of it all was Sarah, navigating the turbulent waters of public opinion, international politics, and scientific resistance. Each small victory, each mind open to new possibilities, was a step toward a future that, though uncertain, offered hope. The submarine in the desert had been just the beginning. Now the waves of change were forming, ready to sweep the world and usher in a new chapter in human history. And Sarah, once a simple American archaeologist, now found herself at the crest of that wave, guiding humanity toward a destiny that even she couldn't fully predict. The years that followed unfolded like an elaborate chess game on a global scale. Sarah and her team, now expanded and spread across the world, moved carefully, each action meticulously planned to prepare humanity for the approaching truth. Mark, from his high-tech base in Tokyo, led a silent revolution in communications technology. Under the guise of advances in quantum computing, he gradually introduced elements of Atlantean technology into the digital fabric of the modern world. "It's fascinating," he shared with Sarah during a secure video conference. "We're essentially creating a parallel internet, one that transcends the physical limitations we know. When the time comes, we'll be able to activate a global communication network that will withstand any catastrophe." Emily, meanwhile, traveled incessantly between research stations in Antarctica, the Arctic, and strategic points around the globe. Her studies on climate change and tectonic movements began to paint an alarming picture that corroborated the Atlantean predictions. "The data is undeniable, Sarah," she reported, her face tired but determined on the screen. "The changes are happening much faster than any conventional model could predict. We need to accelerate our plans." Dr. Hayes, now a respected figure in unconventional academic circles, gave enigmatic lectures that attracted both the curious and skeptics. His theories about advanced pre-Diluvian civilizations gained traction, especially among young researchers eager to challenge the status quo. Sarah, however, faced the most complex challenge of all, navigating the turbulent sea of public opinion and international politics. Her appearances at scientific conferences, TV programs, and even closed UN sessions were carefully orchestrated to sow doubts about accepted history and open minds to previously unimaginable possibilities. One afternoon, after a particularly tense lecture at the World Economic Forum, Sarah found herself in a private room with world leaders and industry magnates. The tension was palpable. "Dr. Mitchell," began a prominent European politician, "your theories are intriguing, but you have to understand the implications of what you're proposing. If what you say is true, we're talking about a complete reconfiguration of the world order." Sarah nodded, maintaining her composure. "Exactly, ma'am, and that's why we're here today. Not to cause panic, but to initiate a dialogue about how we can prepare and adapt." A CEO of one of the world's largest technology companies leaned forward, his eyes shining with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "These Atlantean technologies you mention, are they real? Can you show us concrete evidence?" It was at this moment that Victoria, who had been silently observing from the corner of the room, stepped forward. With a gentle gesture, she activated a device on her wrist. Instantly, the air in the center of the room stirred, and a breathtaking three-dimensional holographic projection materialized, showing Earth as it was 15,000 years ago, with continents in different positions and Atlantis at the center of it all. The attendees were left speechless. Victoria smiled serenely. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a fraction of what we have to share. The question now is, are you ready to be part of the solution?" The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of negotiations, technological demonstrations, and strategic planning. Slowly but steadily, the pieces began to move on the global board. Meanwhile, at strategic locations around the world, the ancient Atlantean containment stations were discreetly reactivated. Each represented a unique challenge, blending ancient technology with modern engineering in a way that defied comprehension. It was during the activation of one of these stations, deep in the Amazon rainforest, that Sarah had an encounter that would change everything. While supervising the process, she felt a familiar presence. Turning around, she saw the Atlantean she had met in Poseidonis. "You have progressed much," it said, its ethereal form contrasting with the dense vegetation around them. Sarah smiled tiredly. "Sometimes it feels like it's not enough. Time is running out, and there's still so much resistance." The Atlantean approached, its energy pulsing softly. "Remember, Sarah, change is rarely smooth or predictable, but each action you and your team take creates ripples that spread in ways you cannot imagine." At that moment, as if to emphasize its words, the ground trembled slightly. It wasn't an earthquake, but a subtle reminder of the forces in motion beneath their feet. "It's beginning, isn't it?" asked Sarah, a chill running down her spine. The Atlantean nodded solemnly. "The first tremors of a great transformation. But do not fear, Sarah. The knowledge you are restoring, the connections you are making, all of this will serve as an anchor for humanity in the turbulent times to come. The sun in the Amazon was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the dense canopy. As Sarah looked at the ancient Atlantean containment station, now humming with renewed energy, she felt a profound sense of purpose. The submarine in the desert had led them here, to this pivotal moment in human history. "We won't fail," she said, more to herself than to the Atlantean. "We can't." The luminous being placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch sending a warm current through her body. "The future is not about success or failure, Sarah. It's about adaptation and evolution, and in that, you humans have always excelled." As night fell over the Amazon, Sarah looked up at the stars visible through breaks in the canopy. The same stars had witnessed the rise and fall of Atlantis, and now they would witness humanity's greatest challenge yet. But with knowledge from the past and technology from beyond imagination, perhaps they stood a chance not just of survival, but of transformation into something greater. The submarine in the desert had been just the first clue in a treasure hunt, spanning millennia. And as Sarah Mitchell stood at the crossroads of past and future, she knew that the true journey was only just beginning. Months turned into years as the project expanded globally. What had begun with a strange discovery in the desert had evolved into a coordinated effort spanning continents, disciplines, and even dimensions of understanding. Sarah, now a recognizable face in scientific circles and beyond, had mastered the delicate art of revealing enough truth to prepare minds without triggering panic. Her TED Talk, enigmatically titled "Remnants of Tomorrow," had gone viral, sparking debates in universities and living rooms alike. At the Phoenix Foundation's new headquarters in Washington, D.C., the team gathered for its annual strategic meeting. The room buzzed with energy as specialists from around the world shared updates on their respective missions. "The European containment grid is online," reported a Norwegian scientist, pointing to glowing nodes on the holographic display. "We've integrated it with existing power infrastructures to avoid detection as suggested." Mark, now sporting a neatly trimmed beard that did little to hide his boyish excitement, jumped in. "And the quantum communication network just achieved 98% coverage. Even in the event of complete conventional system failure, we'll maintain connectivity." Dr. Hayes, his hair now completely white but his eyes still sharp with curiosity, shared archaeological findings that were gradually reshaping mainstream historical narratives. Academia is beginning to accept the possibility of advanced prehistoric civilizations. Not quite Atlantis yet, but the seeds are taking root. Emily, her face weathered from expeditions to Earth's most extreme environments, delivered the most sobering news. "The tectonic instability is accelerating. Our models now predict major geological events within the decade, not the century." We initially thought. A heavy silence fell over the room. Victoria, who had been quietly observing from the head of the table, finally spoke. "Then we must accelerate as well. Phase 3 begins now." Phase 3, Sarah knew, was the most daring part of their plan: direct intervention. No more subtle hints or gradual revelation. It was time to actively prepare humanity for what was coming. "Are we ready for this?" Sarah asked, looking around the room at colleagues who had become family over the years. Victoria's eyes met hers, ancient wisdom meeting determined resolve. "We must be. The waters are already rising, Sarah. The question is no longer if, but when, and how prepared we'll be when they come." That evening, as Sarah stood on the balcony of her apartment overlooking the National Mall, she felt rather than heard the presence behind her. "You've come a long way from that tent in the desert," the Atlantean observed, its luminous form shimmering in the twilight. Sarah smiled, remembering the young archaeologist who had once believed the discovery of an ancient submarine would be the pinnacle of her career. "Sometimes I forget that person existed. So much has changed. And yet the essence remains," the being replied. "Your curiosity, your compassion, your determination to understand. These are the qualities that drew us to you in the first place." Sarah turned to face the ancient guardian. "Will it be enough? Will we be able to save enough people, enough knowledge, enough of what makes us human?" The Atlantean's form pulsed gently, its equivalent of a thoughtful sigh. "That is not for me to know. But I can tell you this. In all the cycles of Earth's history, in all the rises and falls of civilizations, both remembered and forgotten, there has never been an effort quite like yours. The bridge you are building between past and future is unprecedented." Something in its words sparked a memory in Sarah. The bridge. That's what this has all been about, hasn't it? Not just preservation, but connection, linking what was with what will be. Precisely, the Atlantean's mental voice carried a note of approval, and in that connection lies the potential for something greater than mere survival. As the lights of Washington flickered below, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The submarine in the desert had been more than a relic. It had been a message, a beacon calling humanity toward a new destiny. The years ahead would bring challenges greater than any they had faced, but Sarah Mitchell was no longer afraid. With ancient wisdom guiding them and modern ingenuity driving them forward, they would face the coming tide not with fear, but with vision. And somewhere beneath the sands of a distant desert, the submarine that had started it all rested silently. Its mission accomplished, a bridge between worlds, between times, between the humanity that was and the humanity that would be. End of story.